It's always someone else's fault, you're not growing. That's the truth. For years, we tell ourselves stories of blame, of unfairness. They did this to me, or if only things were different. But each time we hand our power to another person or circumstance, we give away the control to create our own future. That is the first step to understanding how to transform your life. This is not about ignoring pain or injustice. It's about taking ownership of your reality and reprogramming your mind so that nothing and nobody can hurt you again. If it's always someone else's fault, you're not growing, and this is not just a statement. It is a principle that will change the way you see your life. For far too long, many of us live trapped in a story we tell ourselves, a narrative that places blame on others, on circumstances, or on the unfairness of the world. If only they had done this differently, we say. If only the situation had been better, we think. If only the timing had been right. These words sound harmless, but they plant seeds of dependency in the mind, making us prisoners of other people's actions instead of masters of our own destiny. Blame feels safe because it removes responsibility. It allows us to believe we are victims of circumstance rather than architects of our future. But the truth is, blaming others gives away your power. Each time you point a finger, you take your hand off the wheel of your life. You surrender control, with it, the ability to grow. Growth begins the moment you realize that blaming others keeps you stagnant in a cycle of resentment and helplessness. Growth begins when you look inward and decide that your life is your responsibility. This is not an easy realization, because blame is deeply embedded in how we process pain. It feels natural to protect ourselves by saying it was someone else's fault. It gives us comfort, but it also keeps us small. You want to transform your life. You must confront this tendency head on and understand that no one outside of you has the power to define your worth, determine your peace, or to control your response unless you allow them to. Every challenge you face, every setback you endure, and every wound you carry is an opportunity to reclaim your power. But you cannot claim it if your mind is clouded with blame. Blame is a trap disguised as justice. It keeps you focused on the wrong thing. Instead of focusing on how to move forward, you remain stuck in the past, reliving the pain, replaying the hurt, and feeding your own suffering. The moment you shift your mindset from blame to ownership, you begin to break free. You begin to see life as a series of lessons, not punishments. You begin to understand that every difficulty carries a gift. That gift is the opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. This transformation starts in the way you speak to yourself. Positive self-talk becomes your weapon against the habit of blame. It rewires your mind to focus on solutions instead of problems, on possibilities instead of limitations. When you shift your inner dialogue to one of responsibility, you stop giving away your power to others. You stop making your peace dependent on someone else's actions, and instead make it dependent on your own choices. This is the essence of personal freedom, the freedom to decide who you are regardless of what has happened to you. It is a mindset that says, I control my life. I control my peace. I control my future. And once you own this truth, you build a shield no one can penetrate. No one can hurt you again. Not in the way they used to, because you have fortified your mind with responsibility and self-love. This is not to say life will become painless. Challenges will still come, people will still disappoint you, and injustice will still exist. But the difference is that you will no longer live in their shadow. You will no longer hand them the power to determine your emotional state. You will meet hardship not with blame but with strength, not with resentment but with resolve. This shift begins the moment you decide to speak differently to yourself. Every time a thought of blame surfaces, replace it with a thought of ownership. Every time you hear yourself saying, "It's their fault," consciously reframe it into, "What can I learn from this?" Every time you feel wronged, ask yourself, "How can I use this to grow?" These are not easy changes, but they are powerful ones. They require discipline and awareness. They require that you begin to notice your thoughts before they control you. And they require courage. The courage to stop living as a victim and start living as a conscious creator of your own life. If you master this first step, releasing blame, you lay the foundation for all personal transformation. You begin to see your life not as something that happens to you, but as something you actively shape. Step out of the cycle of helplessness and step into the cycle of growth. And that is why chapter 1 begins here, with this truth. If it's always someone else's fault, you are giving away your greatest power, the power to transform. Take responsibility for your life, speak positively to yourself, and refuse to hand your peace to anyone else again. This is the first step on the path of lasting change, path that will lead you to a mindset where nothing and nobody can hurt you again. The power of awareness is the foundation of every transformation. Until you truly awaken to the reality of your thoughts, words, and actions, growth will remain out of reach. Awareness is more than simply noticing what is happening around you. It is a deep, conscious recognition of what is happening within you. It is the act of stepping back and observing your own mind, understanding the patterns that guide your thinking, and recognizing the voices that speak to you every day. These voices may be encouraging, but more often they are critical, shaped by years of past experiences, conditioned beliefs, and unconscious habits. The first step in building a powerful mindset is to develop the ability to listen to those inner voices without judgment, to observe them as if they were a separate conversation happening within your mind. This awareness allows you to identify the subtle ways in which blame and negativity creep into your thoughts, often without your conscious permission. When you can see these patterns, you begin to understand the truth. Your mind is not a passive space. It is an active force that shapes the way you interpret reality. Every thought, no matter how small, influences your feelings, your behavior, and ultimately your life. When you are not aware of your inner dialogue, you allow your mind to operate on autopilot, reacting to situations according to old scripts written long before you had control over them. Is where most people lose themselves. Living in reaction rather than conscious choice. Awareness gives you the power to break this cycle. It allows you to question your thoughts before they manifest into words, actions, and emotions. It creates a space between stimulus and response. In that space lies your freedom. Freedom to choose how you speak to yourself. Freedom to decide whether you will interpret events through the lens of blame or growth. Awareness is the moment you stop existing as a passenger in your life and start becoming the driver. It is the act of taking the rearview mirror of self-reflection and the windshield of forward thinking, merging them so that you see clearly both where you have been and where you are going. This clarity transforms your perception of hardship. No longer are difficulties merely obstacles, they become teachers. Awareness teaches you that pain is not something to fear, but something to observe and understand. When you face challenges consciously, you see them as opportunities to learn, to adapt, and to become stronger. Awareness transforms blame into curiosity, shifting your focus from, "Who did this to me?" to, "What is this teaching me?" It turns complaints into questions and weaknesses into possibilities. But awareness is not a one-time act. It is a constant practice, a way of living. It requires vigilance, patience, and discipline. You must train yourself to notice the subtle whispers of doubt, the habitual thoughts of limitation, and the easy trap of self-pity before they take root. This begins with mindfulness, being present with yourself in every moment. The more present you become, the more aware you are of the patterns that no longer serve you. With awareness, you discover the stories you have been telling yourself about who you are and what you deserve. These stories, often unconsciously created, become the filter through which you view your life. If the stories are rooted in blame, fear, or self-doubt, they will continue to limit you. But once you bring them into awareness, you can choose to rewrite them with intention and purpose. Is where transformation begins, when awareness meets conscious choice. And this choice is made in the way you speak to yourself. When awareness grows, so does your ability to speak positively to your own mind, to replace "I can't" with "I can learn," "I am not enough" with "I am becoming," and "they hurt me" with "I choose peace." Positive self-talk is the natural result of awareness, because it is the language of a conscious mind. Awareness also teaches humility, reminding you that life is not entirely within your control, and that you will face circumstances beyond your choosing. But it also reminds you that your power lies in your ability to control how you respond to those circumstances. Awareness is the ability to separate the event from your reaction. See clearly that hurt does not come from the outside. It comes from how you interpret the outside. And once you truly understand this, blame loses its grip. Awareness makes you conscious of the moment before blame is born, allowing you to choose a different path. It teaches you to pause, breathe, and redirect your thoughts toward what serves your growth instead of what diminishes it. This practice of self-observation and mindful choice becomes the foundation for lasting change. It is a muscle that strengthens the more you use it. The more aware you become, the more naturally you will move toward a mindset that refuses to give away your peace to others. Awareness is not passive, it is active and transformative. It is the light that shines into the hidden corners of your mind, illuminating the thoughts that keep you stuck and giving you the clarity to replace them with those that free you. This is why awareness is the second step in your journey of transformation. It is the moment you begin to see that your life is not shaped by others, but by the way you choose to interpret and respond to life. Awareness is the foundation upon which responsibility and positive self-talk are built. Without awareness, your thoughts remain unconscious, and your life remains reactive. With awareness, you begin to reclaim your power, and growth becomes inevitable. It is in awareness that you step out of the role of victim and into the role of creator, where your thoughts, your words, your actions align to build a life of strength, resilience, and peace. Awareness is not just the first skill of transformation. It is the lifelong habit that sustains it. And the moment you decide to live consciously, begin to live differently. You begin to speak differently to yourself. You choose differently in every moment. You refuse to allow blame to define your life. This is the power of awareness. It changes everything, because it changes you. Ownership of your reality is the cornerstone of personal growth. The moment when you stop seeing yourself as a passive participant in life, and begin to see yourself as its active creator, This shift is both powerful and deeply liberating, because when you take ownership, you no longer allow circumstances, people, past events to dictate the way you live, think, or feel. Ownership is not about blaming yourself for everything or carrying guilt for situations that were beyond your control. It is about embracing the truth that your reaction to every event, your interpretation of every challenge, and your response to every setback is within your control. Understanding transforms your entire relationship with life. For many, the temptation to point fingers is constant and comforting because it removes the burden of responsibility. When something goes wrong, it is easier to say, "It's their fault," than to examine how we ourselves might have responded differently. But in giving away that responsibility, we give away our freedom, and the deeper truth is that freedom can only exist when we take full ownership of our reality. Ownership means acknowledging that your life is the sum of your choices, your thoughts, and your actions. It means recognizing that while you cannot control everything that happens to you, you can control how you let those events affect you. It is the difference between being a victim of circumstance and becoming a master of your own destiny. This mindset does not come overnight. It is cultivated through intention, discipline, and self-awareness, but once it takes root, it becomes a powerful force for change. Taking ownership begins with a conscious decision to stop living in the realm of excuses. Excuses are the camouflage of blame. They mask the truth that you are capable of more. When you say, "I couldn't because of this," or "It happened because of them," you deny yourself the power to change your future. But when you say, "I can choose how I respond," or "I will use this situation to grow," you reclaim your authority over your life. Ownership also means recognizing the role your mindset plays in shaping your reality. Your thoughts are not neutral. They create the framework for how you perceive yourself and your world. If your mind is filled with thoughts of limitation, resentment, and self-pity, then your reality will reflect those thoughts. But if you fill your mind with thoughts of possibility, gratitude, and resilience, reality will shift in powerful ways. This is why ownership is inseparable from awareness and positive self-talk. When you own your reality, you become intentional about the way you speak to yourself. You replace words that diminish with words that empower. Choose thoughts that align with growth rather than stagnation. Ownership is also about emotional responsibility. It is understanding that no one can make you feel inferior, angry, or defeated unless you allow them to, and that your emotions are yours to regulate, not theirs to control. This is not to say that others cannot hurt you, but ownership is the armor that changes how that hurt affects you. It gives you the ability to say, "This situation happened, it will not define me." It is a form of self-empowerment that transforms pain into possibility and struggle into strength. Ownership changes your relationship with failure as well. When you own your reality, failure is no longer a source of shame. It becomes a feedback loop, a lesson to be learned rather than a verdict on your worth. This perspective allows you to move forward with courage, knowing that every mistake is an opportunity to refine your approach, strengthen your resolve, and grow wiser. Ownership also brings clarity to your goals. When you stop blaming outside factors, you see clearly what is within your control and what is not. This clarity allows you to focus your energy on what truly matters, on the actions that will move you closer to your purpose, and on the mindset that will carry you there. Taking ownership requires courage because it strips away the comfort of blame. It forces you to confront yourself honestly and to accept that you are responsible for your life in ways you may have been avoiding. But that confrontation is also the doorway to freedom. Once you step through it, you stand in a place of empowerment where you can choose your thoughts, your actions, and ultimately your destiny. Ownership is not a one-time decision. It is a daily commitment. It is choosing every morning to speak to yourself with intention, to take responsibility for your choices, to consciously shape your reality, rather than letting it shape you. It is practicing discipline in your thoughts and actions until it becomes a natural way of living. And with ownership comes peace. When you stop handing your power to others, you stop living in fear, resentment, and regret. You stop waiting for apologies, explanations, or changes that may never come, and you begin to create a life that is grounded in your own power, your own values, and your own truth. This is the essence of ownership. It is the freedom to create the life you desire regardless of external circumstances. It is the realization that while you cannot control every event, you can control the meaning you give it. And in that control lies your power to transform. Ownership turns blame into learning, pain into growth, and struggle into strength. It is the foundation upon which every other chapter of transformation is built. Without ownership, awareness becomes powerless, positive self-talk becomes empty words. But with ownership, awareness and positive self-talk become forces that propel you toward freedom, resilience, and lasting change. And that is why ownership of your reality is not just a choice. It is the choice that defines the rest of your journey. The moment you embrace it, you step into the truth that you are not at the mercy of the world. You are its creator. Your life becomes a canvas upon which you paint with the colors of responsibility, courage, and possibility. Taking ownership of your life is one of the most powerful acts of personal freedom, because it is the moment when you stop giving away your power to circumstances, to people, and to the past, and instead step fully into the understanding that your life is the result of your own choices, your mindset, and your actions, and this realization transforms everything. Because once you take ownership, you can no longer live in the comfort of blame, excuses, or victimhood. You begin to see that blaming others is a form of giving away control, a habit that keeps you stuck and powerless, and that real transformation comes only when you recognize that regardless of what has happened to you or around you, you have the ability to decide how it will affect you, and that decision is yours alone. Ownership is not about self-blame or taking on guilt for things beyond your control. It is about claiming the truth that your life is shaped by how you interpret events, how you react to situations, and how you speak to yourself in the moments that matter. And this truth changes everything, because the power to grow and change lies not in altering what happened, but in altering the meaning you give to what happened, and the actions you take next. For many, the temptation to point fingers is strong, because it feels easier to place responsibility outside of themselves. To say, "They hurt me," "The situation is unfair," or "It wasn't my fault." But this is a form of surrender, a relinquishing of your power, and a refusal to see that even in the most painful or unjust circumstances, you still hold the key to your own peace and growth. Taking ownership means shifting your focus from "Who is at fault?" to "What can I do differently?" And this shift is profound because it turns challenges into opportunities, into lessons, and setbacks into stepping stones. Ownership begins with awareness, the ability to notice your own thoughts, and the recognition that your inner world shapes your outer world. And from this awareness comes choice. the choice to act differently, speak differently, and think differently. It is the decision to stop living reactively and to begin living intentionally. When you take ownership, you no longer let your self-worth depend on others' actions or approval. Instead, you anchor your value in your own integrity and your ability to respond consciously. This also means accepting emotional responsibility, understanding that no one can make you feel weak, angry, or defeated unless you allow them to, and that your emotions are the result of your own inner narrative. You begin to see that hurt does not come purely from the actions of others, but from how you interpret those actions, and once you understand this, blame begins to lose its hold over you. Ownership transforms the way you view failure as well. Instead of seeing failure as evidence that the world is against you or that you are powerless, see it as feedback, an opportunity to learn and grow. This perspective creates resilience, because it means you are no longer dependent on external validation to define your worth or measure your success. Ownership also changes your relationship with excuses, because excuses are the language of avoidance, a way to deny responsibility without admitting it. When you stop making excuses, you open the door to action and accountability. You begin to say, I may not have been able to control everything, but I can control my next step, and in that choice lies freedom. Taking ownership requires humility as well as courage, because it means looking honestly at where you have fallen short and accepting that there is always something you can do to change your reality. When the situation seems beyond repair, it means acknowledging your role in your own life without being self-critical in a way that destroys your confidence, instead adopting a stance of curiosity and self-improvement. Ownership is also deeply connected to your language. The words you speak to yourself shape your inner reality. When you take responsibility for your life, self-talk shifts from, "They did this to me," to, "How can I grow from this?" And from, "I can't because of them," to, "I will choose my way forward." This shift in language rewires your thinking, aligning it with growth rather than limitation. Furthermore, ownership is not something you do once. It is a daily commitment, a practice that must be renewed with every choice, every action, and every moment of self-reflection. It is the habit of saying, I am responsible for my peace, my joy, my growth, and living in a way that reflects that truth. This discipline changes how you respond to life's challenges. Instead of reacting with blame, anger, or resentment, you respond with intention, clarity, and empowerment. Ownership gives you the ability to direct your life instead of letting life direct you, and this is the essence of true freedom. When you stop blaming others, you stop living as a victim and begin to live as a creator, capable of steering your life toward your goals and values. It transforms your mindset from one of helplessness to one of possibility, because you realize that while you cannot control every situation, you can always control your reaction to it. This is where resilience is born, because ownership strengthens your inner foundation, making you less dependent on external circumstances for your peace, and more dependent on your own inner choices. It makes you accountable, not to the opinions of others, but to your own principles and growth, and that accountability is what drives meaningful change. Ownership also requires letting go. Letting go of the need to control everything outside of you, letting go of resentment, letting go of the belief that your happiness depends on someone else's actions. This letting go does not mean passivity. Rather, it is the acceptance that your power lies within your own mind, your own choices, and your own commitment to your values. When you take ownership, You stop waiting for permission, approval, or change from others, and instead start acting in alignment with your own truth. This act of ownership changes everything because it shifts your entire relationship with life. From one of reaction to one of creation means that even in pain, even in injustice, even in disappointment, you still have a choice, and in that choice lies your power. Ownership is the bridge between awareness and transformation. Without it, awareness remains observation without action. And without action, change cannot happen. Ownership turns self-awareness into self-mastery, and self-mastery is the foundation of lasting growth. It is the moment when you stop living by default and start living by design. This is why ownership is not just a chapter in your journey. It is the cornerstone, the decision that shapes every step forward. When you take ownership, you no longer hand your power away to the circumstances of your life, and you stop living in the shadow of blame. Instead, you step fully into the truth that your life is yours to create, that your thoughts are your most powerful tools, that your future is shaped by the choices you make right now, in this moment, and every moment after. Ownership is not a burden. It is liberation, because it gives you control, clarity, and the ability to shape your life with intention, courage, unwavering commitment to your own growth and peace. The power of positive self-talk is not just a motivational idea. It is a life-changing practice that transforms how you think, how you feel, and how you move through the world, because the language you speak to yourself becomes the foundation of your mindset, and your mindset determines your reality. And when you intentionally choose words of encouragement, hope, and strength, shift the entire trajectory of your life. And this is why mastering your inner dialogue is one of the most powerful tools for personal transformation, because while circumstances and events around you will always be uncertain and beyond your full control, the voice inside your mind is something you can train, shape, and direct to serve your growth rather than your fear. And it is this inner voice that determines whether challenges break you or make you stronger. Positive self-talk begins with awareness, the ability to notice the patterns of thought that run in your mind, often without conscious attention, to recognize that these patterns have a powerful effect on your emotional state and your actions, because the words you repeat to yourself shape not only your beliefs, but your behavior, and they are either a ladder to growth or a chain that keeps you stuck. And the good news is that awareness is the first step to change. Once you become aware of your inner language, you gain the ability to consciously replace negative patterns with positive ones. This requires discipline, because negative self-talk often comes automatically, shaped by years of habit, past experiences, and conditioning, and overcoming it is not instantaneous. It is an intentional process of reprogramming your mind to respond differently, and that process begins with choice, with the decision to no longer allow self-criticism, doubt, and fear to dominate your thoughts, instead to deliberately speak to yourself in ways that foster confidence, resilience, and self-belief. Positive self-talk is a way of rewriting the story you tell yourself, and this story matters deeply, because the narrative you hold in your mind becomes your reality. And when your inner story is rooted in self-compassion, possibility, and strength, you approach life with a sense of empowerment rather than limitation, and every challenge becomes a chance to grow instead of a reason to despair. This practice of speaking to yourself positively is not about ignoring reality or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It is about choosing to frame reality in ways that support your growth and well-being. That requires honesty as well as kindness, because positive self-talk must be grounded in truth, not empty affirmations, to be truly transformative. It means saying, "This is hard, but I can handle it," rather than, "This is impossible," and "I am learning and growing," rather than, "I'm a failure." And this shift in language rewires your brain to focus on solutions and possibilities instead of obstacles and limitations. The power of positive self-talk is amplified when it is consistent, because your mind learns through repetition, and the more you speak to yourself with encouragement and belief, the stronger those patterns of thought become. Over time they begin to replace the old patterns of doubt, self-criticism, and negativity. This is how lasting change is created. Through consistent practice, moment by moment, thought by thought, positivity becomes your default way of thinking. Positive self-talk also changes your relationship with failure and setbacks, because when your inner voice is one of encouragement, you see mistakes not as proof of inadequacy, but as opportunities for growth and learning. This perspective fuels resilience, persistence, and courage, because you are no longer afraid of failure. Instead, you see it as a necessary step in the journey of growth, and you develop the inner strength to keep going no matter the obstacles. Furthermore, positive self-talk strengthens your ability to handle external negativity, because when your inner voice is strong and supportive, the opinions and criticisms of others lose their power to shake you. You learn to anchor your self-worth in your own words and beliefs, rather than in external validation. This builds an unshakable foundation of confidence that no circumstance can easily destroy. The process of mastering positive self-talk also involves replacing destructive mental habits with constructive ones, such as replacing "I can't" with "I will try," "This is too hard" with "I can learn," and "I'm not good enough" with "I am capable of growth." And these changes may seem small at first, but they accumulate into a profound transformation of your inner world, and consequently, of your outer life. Positive self-talk is also deeply connected to gratitude, because when you train your mind to speak to yourself with kindness and encouragement, naturally begin to notice the good in yourself and in life. And gratitude reinforces positive thinking by shifting your focus from what is wrong to what is right, from what is lacking to what is present. This shift fuels greater joy, peace, and motivation, because a grateful mind is a powerful mind. Ownership of your thoughts is central to this process, because positive self-talk is not about ignoring challenges but about choosing the thoughts that serve your growth rather than those that limit it. This requires conscious effort, self-awareness, and practice, and over time, as you commit to this practice, positive self-talk becomes a habit, a powerful mental muscle that protects you against negativity and strengthens your resilience. This is why positive self-talk is not a luxury but a necessity for transformation, because your inner voice shapes every experience, decision, and outcome in your life, and when you master it, you gain a powerful tool for shaping your reality in alignment with your highest values and your deepest potential. It is a form of self-empowerment that allows you to navigate life's challenges with clarity, courage, and peace. You are no longer at the mercy of negative self-beliefs or harmful narratives, but instead you are actively creating the conditions for your growth and well-being through the language you use with yourself. Positive self-talk is a daily practice, a deliberate choice to speak to yourself with kindness, encouragement, and belief, and with each repetition, rewires your brain and transforms your life, because your words shape your thoughts, Your thoughts shape your actions, and your actions shape your future. The practice of positive self-talk is ultimately the practice of taking control of your destiny, and in this control lies freedom, strength, and transformation, because when you own the words you speak to yourself, you own the power to shape your life. Step into a reality where nothing and nobody can hurt you again, because your inner voice has become your greatest source of protection, empowerment, growth. Building unshakable confidence begins with the understanding that true confidence is not about being perfect, nor is it about having everything under control. It is about believing in your ability to face life as it is, to act with courage despite uncertainty, and to trust in your own inner resources, because confidence is not an external gift, but an internal state cultivated through consistent practice, self-awareness, and deliberate choices, and it is strengthened every time you choose action over fear, truth over illusion, and growth over comfort. Your full attention and this understanding transforms the way you approach every area of life, from relationships to work to personal goals. You no longer rely on validation from others to feel worthy, your full attention, but instead draw strength from the knowledge that your value is inherent and your ability to navigate life is within your control. Confidence begins with self-acceptance, because until you accept yourself fully, including your strengths and weaknesses, your past mistakes, your unique qualities, you will always seek approval from outside sources. And this dependency weakens your inner power, whereas embracing yourself as a work in progress allows you to move forward with courage, knowing that growth is a continuous journey and not a destination. This acceptance frees you from the paralyzing fear of judgment, comparison, or failure. Confidence is also born from competence, because every skill you develop, every challenge you overcome, and every lesson you learn reinforces the belief that you are capable. This belief fuels further action, creating a cycle of growth, courage, and empowerment, because action generates evidence of your capability, evidence strengthens belief, and belief in turn inspires more action, creating momentum that propels you toward your highest potential. Another essential component of unshakable confidence is resilience, the ability to face setbacks without losing your sense of self-worth or purpose, because life will inevitably present obstacles, disappointments, and criticism, and it is not the absence of difficulty, but your response to it, that defines your confidence, and resilience is developed through persistence, reflection, and the conscious decision to see challenges as opportunities for growth, rather than proof of inadequacy. This mindset transforms adversity into a powerful teacher, allowing you to emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable than before. Confidence also requires mastery over your inner dialogue, because the words you speak to yourself shape your beliefs, emotions, and actions. When you replace self-doubt, criticism, and fear with encouragement, affirmation, and determination, you create an internal environment that supports courage and initiative. This consistent positive self-talk rewires your mind to naturally lean toward empowerment rather than limitation. This internal shift is often more transformative than any external achievement. Taking ownership of your life is inseparable from confidence. The moment you stop blaming others or circumstances for your outcomes and start claiming responsibility for your choices, actions, and growth, you step fully into your own power, and this act of ownership builds an unshakable foundation of confidence that no external condition can shake. It is rooted not in luck, approval, or circumstance, but in your commitment to act with integrity, resilience, and purpose regardless of what happens around you. Confidence is also cultivated through intentional risk-taking, because stepping outside your comfort zone and confronting fear head-on is the most direct path to proving to yourself that you are capable, and each successful step taken in courage reinforces your belief in yourself, and even when risks lead to temporary failure, the experience becomes a building block for growth, because confidence is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it, and this distinction transforms how you approach life's challenges, goals, and opportunities. Self-discipline is another critical aspect of unshakable confidence, because the ability to consistently do what is necessary, even when motivation wanes, strengthens your trust in your own abilities and your belief in your capacity to achieve meaningful outcomes. This self-trust becomes the backbone of confidence, allowing you to rely on your own consistency, focus, commitment, rather than on external circumstances or fleeting emotions. Confidence is also nourished by gratitude and self-compassion, because recognizing your achievements, appreciating your efforts, and treating yourself with kindness creates an inner climate of positivity and encouragement that supports bold action, perseverance, and resilience. And this mindset buffers against the destructive effects of criticism, comparison, or setbacks, because your sense of worth is anchored internally rather than externally, and it allows you to maintain momentum even in difficult times. Surrounding yourself with supportive, growth-oriented people is also essential, because while true confidence comes from within, influence of your environment cannot be ignored, and being around those who encourage, challenge, uplift you reinforces your belief in your own abilities, inspires you to push beyond limits, and provides examples of courage, resilience, and integrity to emulate. And this social reinforcement strengthens your internal foundation of confidence. Confidence grows when you live with clarity of purpose, because knowing your values, your goals, and your vision allows you to act with intentionality and conviction, and this clarity gives direction to your efforts, reduces self-doubt, and enhances the sense of control over your life. And when your actions align with your principles, confidence arises naturally from the harmony between your inner truth and your outward behavior. Developing unshakable confidence also involves managing your mindset in the face of criticism or negativity, because external judgments will inevitably arise. And those who possess true confidence are not immune to criticism, but are empowered by it to examine themselves constructively, learn where improvement is needed, and move forward without letting judgment define their worth or limit their actions. This ability to process criticism without losing self-belief separates the truly confident from those who rely on constant external validation. Confidence is reinforced through consistent reflection and acknowledgement of progress, because taking the time to review accomplishments, recognize lessons learned, and honor the resilience you have shown strengthens the internal narrative that you are capable, worthy, and growing. This narrative becomes the foundation for future action, persistence, and courage, because it reminds you that you have succeeded before, and you are equipped to succeed again, regardless of obstacles. Ultimately, building unshakable confidence is a lifelong journey, because life is dynamic and ever-changing, and the ability to remain grounded, courageous, and self-assured requires continuous practice, self-awareness, and commitment to personal growth. And every choice you make to act with courage, trust yourself, and embrace your potential strengthens this foundation, creating a life in which nothing and nobody can shake your peace, your belief in yourself, or your capacity to thrive. Because confidence is not a fleeting feeling, but a cultivated state of being, rooted in ownership, action, resilience, self-compassion, and unwavering commitment to your own growth. And as you cultivate it, realize that the greatest power lies not in circumstances, approval, or external validation, but in the mastery of your mind, the consistency of your actions, and the courage to step boldly into your life, with the knowledge that you are capable, worthy, unstoppable. The ability to shift your mindset in moments of difficulty is one of the most powerful skills you can develop. Life will inevitably present challenges, disappointments, and situations that feel beyond your control, and the way you choose to interpret and respond to those situations determines not only your emotional state, but the outcome of your experience. This is why mindset is not a passive condition, but an active choice, because you can train your mind to approach life with resilience, clarity, strength, and this training begins with the understanding that your thoughts are not facts, but interpretations, and that those interpretations can be reshaped to serve your growth rather than your fear. And this shift transforms the way you respond to adversity, enabling you to move through life with a greater sense of peace and empowerment, because your mindset becomes the foundation on which your reality is built, and when it is grounded in positivity and self-belief, you are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, but instead become the creator of your own life experience. Shifting your mindset begins with awareness, the ability to recognize when your thoughts are leading you into fear, doubt, or negativity, and to consciously intervene before those thoughts become your reality. Because most people live on autopilot, unconsciously allowing their thoughts to shape their emotions and actions without questioning whether those thoughts are true, useful, or helpful, and this unconscious process keeps them trapped in patterns of limitation, self-criticism, and victimhood, whereas awareness allows you to break that cycle, deliberately choose thoughts that empower rather than disempower you. This awareness is strengthened through mindfulness and reflection, because by pausing to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment, you create the space to choose how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. This capacity to pause transforms how you navigate difficulty, because it turns every challenge into an opportunity for conscious choice rather than unconscious reactivity. This conscious choice is the cornerstone of a growth mindset. A growth mindset is the belief that challenges, setbacks, and failures are not indications of your worth or ability, but opportunities to learn, grow, and strengthen your resilience. This belief changes everything, because it transforms your approach to obstacles from one of fear and avoidance to one of curiosity and courage. It allows you to approach life as a continuous journey of development, rather than a fixed state determined by circumstance. Shifting your mindset also requires self-compassion, because when difficulties arise, your inner voice can either become a harsh critic or a source of encouragement and strength, and choosing the latter means treating yourself with kindness, patience, and understanding, because self-compassion provides emotional resilience and protects your confidence, allowing you to face challenges without being crushed by self-doubt or self-blame. This mindset change strengthens your ability to persevere even in the face of difficulty. Another key to shifting your mindset is reframing, the skill of looking at situations from a different perspective and recognizing that even hardship carries lessons, opportunities, or hidden benefits. Because the way you frame an experience determines how you feel about it and what you take away from it. Reframing allows you to transform pain into growth, loss into learning, and setbacks into stepping stones, And this ability to reframe is a powerful tool for building emotional resilience and creating lasting transformation in your life. Gratitude plays a crucial role in shifting your mindset, because when you train your mind to focus on what is working, what is possible, and what you already have, you create a mental environment that fosters hope, strength, and optimism, and this focus naturally shifts your energy away from fear, lack, and limitation toward growth, abundance, and possibility. Gratitude becomes a daily practice that rewires your mind to naturally lean toward positivity, even in times of difficulty. The language you use with yourself also shapes your mindset, because words have the power to shape your beliefs, emotions, and actions. And when you choose words that reinforce strength, resilience, and possibility, you program your mind to operate from those qualities, whereas negative or self-limiting language reinforces doubt, fear, and limitation. This is why deliberate self-talk is a core tool for shifting your mindset, because it creates a constant internal reinforcement of the beliefs that serve your growth and well-being. Shifting your mindset also involves taking ownership of your story, because when you stop blaming others or circumstances for your reality and start claiming responsibility for your choices, actions, and growth, your full attention, you step fully into your power, and this ownership allows you to change the narrative of your life from one of helplessness to one of empowerment. You recognize that while you cannot control every event in your life, you can control how you interpret, respond to, and grow from those events. This shift is the heart of mindset transformation. Consistency is essential in developing this skill, because mindset is not something you change once and then forget. It is an ongoing practice that requires daily attention, intentionality, and commitment, because your mind is constantly being shaped by thoughts, habits, and environment, and without conscious effort, old patterns will reassert themselves. And this is why developing the habit of intentional thought, reflection, and positive self-talk is critical to sustaining a mindset that serves your growth and well-being over the long term. Shifting your mindset also transforms how you view failure, because instead of seeing it as proof of inadequacy, you begin to see it as a natural part of learning and progress. And this shift removes the fear of failure and opens the door to bold action, risk-taking, innovation, because when failure is no longer a threat to your identity or self-worth, you can engage fully in life without the heavy burden of self-doubt, and this freedom creates the conditions for growth, creativity, and transformation. Developing this skill also strengthens your resilience in relationships, because a mindset grounded in positivity and growth allows you to approach conflict, criticism, and differences with openness and understanding rather than defensiveness or avoidance. And this creates healthier communication, deeper connection, and more constructive outcomes, because your mindset shapes not only your inner world, but also how you interact with others. A growth-oriented mindset fosters empathy, collaboration, and mutual respect. Ultimately, shifting your mindset is the practice of taking control of your inner world so that external circumstances do not dictate your peace, your confidence, or your growth, because your mindset is the lens through which you experience life. And when you train that lens to focus on possibility, strength, and learning, you transform the way you experience every moment, every challenge, and every opportunity. And this transformation becomes the foundation of a life where nothing and nobody can permanently hurt you, because you have mastered the ability to choose your thoughts, reframe your experiences, and cultivate a mindset that protects your well-being and fuels your growth. And in this mastery lies freedom, power, and transformation. Because when your mindset is aligned with your highest values and your deepest potential, you live from a place of clarity, resilience, and unstoppable purpose. The power of self-talk in transforming your life cannot be overstated, because the words you speak to yourself every day are the foundation upon which your beliefs, emotions, and actions are built. Those words are filled with doubt, fear, and limitation. They will reinforce a mindset that keeps you trapped in cycles of negativity and self-sabotage, whereas intentional positive self-talk rewires your mind to focus on possibility, strength, and growth. And this shift transforms the way you experience life. Your inner dialogue shapes your perception of reality. And when you consciously choose empowering language, you create an internal environment that nurtures courage, resilience, and self-belief. Internal environment becomes your most reliable source of strength in moments of challenge. Self-talk is the voice you use to interpret events, guide your choices, and respond to yourself under pressure. And this voice has immense influence over your life because it determines whether you see obstacles as threats or opportunities, whether you define yourself by your failures or your potential, and whether you react with fear or with confidence. This is why mastering self-talk is one of the most practical and transformative skills you can develop, because it is the constant stream of language within you that directs your energy, focus, and emotional state. When aligned with a mindset of growth and positivity, it transforms every moment into an opportunity for empowerment rather than limitation. The first step to transforming your self-talk is awareness, because most people speak to themselves without conscious thought, repeating mental patterns that were learned in childhood or shaped by past experiences, often without realizing how those patterns influence their self-perception and actions. This lack of awareness keeps them locked in cycles of self-criticism, doubt, and fear, whereas cultivating awareness allows you to identify when your self-talk is disempowering, to pause before responding to yourself, to deliberately replace limiting statements with words that reinforce strength, resilience, and possibility. And this awareness becomes the foundation of lasting change. Positive self-talk begins with choosing affirmations and statements that reinforce your worth, capability, and potential, because affirmations are not merely empty phrases, but deliberate messages to your subconscious mind that shape your beliefs over time. And when repeated consistently, they create new mental pathways that support empowerment, courage, and self-trust. This consistent reinforcement rewires your brain to naturally seek out evidence of your strengths and possibilities, rather than dwelling on shortcomings or fears. And this shift in self-dialogue becomes a powerful tool for building confidence and resilience. Self-talk is also strengthened by reframing negative situations, because every moment in life offers multiple ways to interpret it. And when you intentionally choose a perspective that focuses on learning, growth, and potential, you change not only your emotional state but the trajectory of your actions, your full attention, because your self-talk then becomes a compass that guides you toward empowerment rather than limitation. This ability to reframe is a skill that transforms obstacles into opportunities, challenges into growth, and setbacks into stepping stones towards success. Developing empowering self-talk requires self-compassion, because without kindness toward yourself, self-talk can easily become another form of internal criticism, reinforcing feelings of unworthiness and failure, whereas self-compassion allows you to speak to yourself with patience, encouragement, and understanding, especially when you encounter difficulty. And this nurturing self-talk strengthens your emotional resilience, enabling you to face challenges without losing faith in yourself, and creating a mental environment in which growth and transformation become possible, even under pressure. The powerful aspect of self-talk is its role in shaping your emotional state, because your inner language influences how you feel moment to moment, and by choosing words that inspire calm, courage, and optimism, you shift your emotional baseline toward positivity, in turn influences your actions and outcomes, and this feedback loop strengthens over time. Because consistent positive self-talk creates lasting changes in your mindset and emotional resilience, making positivity and confidence your default state rather than a fleeting mood. Self-talk also impacts your level of self-discipline and perseverance, because the way you speak to yourself during difficult tasks determines whether you give up or push through, whether you focus on obstacles or on solutions, whether you sustain your motivation over the long term. And when your self-talk consistently reinforces determination, capability, and purpose, you build a mental habit of persistence that carries you through challenges, because you have trained your mind to see effort as progress and setbacks as part of the learning process, rather than as proof of failure. The language you use in self-talk also shapes your identity, because the stories you tell yourself about who you are influence how you act, the goals you pursue, and how you respond to difficulty. And when you intentionally craft a story grounded in self-worth, resilience, and growth, you change the trajectory of your life, because identity is not fixed, but shaped by the beliefs and narratives you continually reinforce through your self-talk. And this realization empowers you to consciously rewrite your internal script to align with your highest potential. Consistency in positive self-talk is critical, because transformation does not happen in a single moment, but through the steady repetition of thoughts and language that reinforce empowerment, and without this consistency, old patterns will resurface, keeping you in cycles of doubt and limitation, whereas deliberate, daily practice of self-talk creates lasting change by continually reinforcing the beliefs and perspectives that support your growth, confidence, resilience. Surrounding yourself with empowering influences also strengthens self-talk, because the language you hear from others influences the language you use internally, and when you choose relationships, environments, media that reinforce positivity, growth, and possibility, you create external reinforcement for your internal dialogue. Synergy accelerates the transformation of your mindset, because your environment and self-talk work together to shape your reality. Ultimately, mastering self-talk is about taking ownership of your inner world, because no matter what happens externally, you have the power to choose the words you speak to yourself, and those choices shape your emotions, beliefs, actions, and ultimately your life. When you consistently speak to yourself with encouragement, compassion, and empowerment, create a mental and emotional foundation that cannot be shaken by circumstance, criticism, or challenge, and in this mastery lies freedom, because when your self-talk is intentionally aligned with your highest values and your deepest potential, nothing and nobody can truly hurt you again. Because you have trained your mind to be your strongest ally, to speak words that build you up rather than tear you down. Create a life guided by positivity, courage, and unshakable self-belief, and this is the true transformation that empowers you to live with strength, peace, and unstoppable purpose. Building unshakable resilience begins with understanding that your strength is not measured by how rarely you face hardship, but by how skillfully you respond when challenges arise. And this understanding transforms your perspective, because life is inevitably filled with trials, setbacks, and moments that test your resolve, and resilience is the internal capacity to move through those moments without being broken, diminished, or defined by them, and this capacity is built through intentional mindset work, daily practice, and self-awareness. Resilience is not a fixed trait, but a skill that can be strengthened, and the foundation of that skill is rooted in the way you think, speak to yourself, and interpret the events of your life. Resilience requires accepting that difficulty is a natural part of life, and not a sign that something is wrong with you, because when you frame challenges as opportunities for growth rather than punishments or failures, you shift your entire relationship with adversity. This reframing allows you to approach life with courage and curiosity, rather than fear and avoidance. This shift creates a strong foundation for enduring strength. Resilience is about transforming obstacles into stepping stones toward growth, rather than walls that block your path. This transformation begins within the mind. One of the most important aspects of developing resilience is cultivating self-trust, because when you trust yourself, you believe in your ability to handle whatever comes your way, and this belief changes the way you face difficulty. Because self-trust allows you to act from confidence rather than doubt, to make decisions with clarity rather than hesitation, and to recover from setbacks with determination rather than despair. And self-trust is built by consistently proving to yourself that you can rely on your inner strength through both reflection and deliberate action, because resilience is strengthened when you repeatedly show yourself that you are capable of navigating adversity. Emotional regulation is another cornerstone of resilience, because your ability to manage your emotions under pressure determines whether you respond with clarity and composure, or with reactivity and overwhelm. And this regulation is not about suppressing emotions, but about acknowledging them without letting them control your response. Because resilience grows when you can navigate emotional turbulence without losing your sense of stability, purpose, and self-worth. This requires mindfulness, self-awareness, and intentional self-talk that reinforces calm, confidence, and clarity in the face of challenge. A resilient mindset also includes adaptability, because life is unpredictable, and the ability to shift perspective, adjust plans, and remain open to new possibilities is what allows you to thrive in the face of change, uncertainty, and difficulty. And adaptability transforms challenges from rigid barriers into dynamic opportunities for growth, because you become able to flow with life rather than resist it. This fluid approach strengthens your capacity to persevere without losing momentum or self-belief. This is why adaptability is a key part of the foundation of resilience. Resilience is also strengthened through gratitude, because the practice of finding what is good and meaningful even in difficulty shifts your focus away from loss and limitation toward possibility and growth. And gratitude becomes a stabilizing force in times of uncertainty, because it reminds you of the resources, strengths, and opportunities that still exist. This shift in focus fuels your ability to endure, because resilience is not merely about enduring pain, but about finding the potential for growth and transformation within it. And gratitude makes that possible by opening your mind to perspective and possibility. Building resilience also requires setting clear boundaries, because protecting your emotional and mental energy is essential when navigating challenge, and when you clearly define what is acceptable and what is not, create the space needed to recover, adapt, and grow, and boundaries become a form of self-respect that strengthens your inner stability, because resilience is supported by the ability to prioritize what matters and let go of what drains your energy without guilt or hesitation. This discipline is a crucial part of sustaining strength over time. Self-compassion is another critical component of resilience, because when you face difficulty, the way you treat yourself determines how quickly and effectively you recover. And self-compassion allows you to approach yourself with kindness and understanding rather than criticism and blame. This nurturing approach fosters emotional recovery, because resilience is not about being tough at all costs, but about cultivating the ability to restore and rebuild yourself with care, patience, and faith in your own capacity to grow stronger. Resilience is deeply connected to your purpose, because when you have clarity about why you are moving forward, what matters most to you, and what you want to create in your life, your challenges take on meaning, and your persistence becomes grounded in something greater than the obstacles themselves. This sense of purpose fuels your capacity to endure, because resilience is sustained by a deep connection to a vision or value that motivates you to keep going even when the path is difficult. Developing resilience also involves learning to reframe setbacks as feedback rather than failure, because every challenge carries lessons that can strengthen your skills, deepen your understanding, and expand your capacity to thrive. And when you approach setbacks in this way, you transform your relationship with adversity, because you begin to see difficulty as a teacher rather than an enemy. This transformation allows resilience to become not just a response to hardship, but a way of living that embraces growth as an ongoing process. Consistency in building resilience is essential, because resilience grows through repeated practice, reflection, and reinforcement. Without ongoing attention, old habits of self-doubt, fear, or avoidance will reassert themselves, whereas deliberate daily choices to strengthen your mindset, regulate your emotions, practice gratitude, maintain boundaries, and nurture self-compassion create lasting resilience that becomes an integral part of who you are. And this consistency transforms resilience from a reactive skill into a stable foundation for navigating life. Ultimately, resilience is the ability to respond to life with courage, clarity, and growth, and it is built through intentional mindset work, deliberate self-talk, emotional regulation, adaptability, gratitude, self-compassion, boundaries, purpose, and consistency, because these elements combine to create a mental and emotional framework that protects you from being permanently hurt by circumstance or other people. This framework empowers you to stand strong in the face of challenge, to recover more quickly from adversity, and to grow stronger with each experience. And in this mastery lies freedom, because when your resilience is rooted in a deliberate mindset of growth, self-trust, and positivity, nothing and nobody can truly break you. And this is why building resilience is not simply a response to hardship, but the foundation for a life where you are empowered to navigate anything with peace, strength, and unwavering self-belief, because resilience transforms not only how you endure, but how you thrive. It becomes a lifelong skill that ensures your inner world remains unshakable regardless of what life throws your way. Forgiveness is one of the most profound acts of self-liberation you can ever practice, because holding on to anger, resentment, and blame is a heavy burden that keeps your mind and heart locked in pain, and this pain often comes not from the harm others have caused, but from the stories we repeat to ourselves about those harms, which feed cycles of bitterness and keep us trapped in a victim mindset. And this is why forgiveness is not just about releasing the other person, but about freeing yourself from the prison of past wounds, because when you forgive, you stop allowing the actions of others to control your peace, your emotions, and your sense of worth. And in doing so, you take ownership of your inner world, which is the core of true empowerment. Forgiveness begins with understanding that forgiving does not mean excusing harmful behavior or denying that wrongs occurred, rather choosing to let go of the emotional hold those wrongs have on you. And this choice requires deep self-awareness, because you must first acknowledge your pain without denying it, and then consciously decide not to let that pain define your future. And this decision is an act of strength rather than weakness, because it means you are reclaiming your emotional freedom and refusing to give away your power to the past. Self-forgiveness is equally important, because many people carry guilt and shame for their own mistakes long after they have occurred. This self-directed blame creates an ongoing inner conflict that undermines self-worth, peace, and growth. And self-forgiveness allows you to release that inner burden by acknowledging your humanity, accepting your imperfections, making peace with your past actions, because growth comes not from perfection, but from learning, adapting, and moving forward. This release is a vital step in transforming your mindset toward empowerment and resilience. Forgiveness transforms your inner dialogue. When you forgive, you stop feeding mental narratives that replay hurt, blame, and resentment, and instead replace them with narratives of growth, compassion, and peace. And this shift in self-talk is essential, because the way you speak to yourself about the past shapes your present reality, and when your internal dialogue aligns with forgiveness, you create space for healing and strength rather than bitterness and limitation. Choosing forgiveness also changes the way you see others, because when you release resentment, you are no longer bound by the need to control, punish, or retaliate, and instead you begin to see people as human beings capable of error, just as you are. And this shift in perspective softens your heart, strengthens your empathy, and dissolves the emotional walls that separate you from others. And in doing so, forgiveness becomes a powerful tool for cultivating deeper connection, peace, and personal freedom. Forgiveness is not a single act but a process, because wounds and hurts are rarely healed instantly, and this process requires patience, self-awareness, and compassion, both for yourself and for others. And part of this process is acknowledging that forgiveness does not guarantee reconciliation, because forgiveness is primarily about your own healing rather than restoring a relationship. And understanding this distinction frees you from unrealistic expectations and helps you focus on the most important outcome: your inner peace. Forgiveness strengthens resilience, because letting go of past hurts clears the emotional weight that can hold you back, and this emotional release allows you to face challenges with greater clarity and strength. Your fullchen, and it empowers you to respond to life from a place of freedom rather than reaction, because when you carry forgiveness within you, you create an inner shield that protects your peace, no matter what external circumstances arise. Practicing forgiveness also deepens self-awareness, because it requires examining your feelings honestly, understanding the impact of past events on your life, and recognizing where blame has shaped your mindset. And through this awareness, you gain insight into your patterns of thought, emotional triggers, and the areas where healing is needed. And this insight becomes a guide for transformation. Self-awareness and forgiveness work together to break cycles of pain and open the way for lasting inner freedom. Forgiveness nurtures your emotional health, because holding resentment and anger fuels stress, emotional exhaustion, and a sense of being stuck. Whereas forgiveness releases emotional tension and creates mental clarity. And this emotional release is essential for living with peace and joy, because when you let go of the burden of blame, you open yourself to love, compassion, and deeper meaning. This shift becomes a powerful turning point in your personal growth journey. Forgiveness is also a profound act of empowerment, because it moves responsibility for your emotional state from external factors to yourself, and this shift is transformational, because it means you are no longer dependent on others to change in order for you to feel peace, but instead you choose to create your peace regardless of outside actions, and this choice rewires your inner world, because your power comes not from controlling others, but from controlling your own mind and heart. This is the true essence of resilience and self-mastery. Developing the practice of forgiveness requires intentional self-talk, because the language you use toward yourself and others shapes your ability to release hurt, and affirmations such as, "I release this pain for my peace," or "I choose freedom over resentment," become powerful tools to reinforce your decision to forgive. Words have the power to rewire thought patterns and strengthen your commitment to emotional freedom, and consistent self-talk of this kind strengthens forgiveness until it becomes a natural part of your mindset. Forgiveness also aligns with gratitude, because when you forgive, you open your heart to the positive aspects of life. Even in the face of difficulty, this alignment shifts your focus toward healing and growth, rather than lingering in pain, and gratitude becomes a natural companion to forgiveness. Passion, because it anchors your perspective in appreciation for life's lessons rather than bitterness for life's wounds. This combination becomes a transformative force for peace, resilience, and empowerment. Ultimately, forgiveness is not something you do for others, but a gift you give yourself, because it breaks the chains of emotional bondage and restores your power to live with peace, strength, and self-belief, your full attention, and it transforms your mindset, because it replaces narratives of blame with narratives of growth, compassion, and freedom. And in this transformation lies your ability to live fully without the weight of past hurt, because forgiveness heals not only the wound but the soul. When you cultivate forgiveness in your life, nothing and nobody can ever truly hurt you again, because your heart becomes anchored in peace, your mind in strength, and your spirit in freedom. And this is the essence of transforming your mindset through positive self-talk, resilience, and emotional mastery, because forgiveness is not a weakness, but a declaration of your choice to rise above the pain, reclaim your power, live in unshakable peace. This choice becomes the ultimate transformation in your life. The power of positive self-talk is one of the most transformative tools you can cultivate, because the language you use internally shapes not only your mindset, but also your emotions, actions, and ultimately the trajectory of your life. This truth is rooted in neuroscience, which shows that your brain responds to the words you repeat to yourself by reinforcing patterns of thought that either strengthen or weaken your sense of self and your capacity to navigate challenges. Therefore, mastering positive self-talk becomes an essential practice for anyone who wants to transform their life, because it is the foundation for building resilience, confidence, and emotional freedom, and it directly influences your ability to ensure that nothing and nobody can hurt you again. Positive self-talk is the conscious choice to replace harmful, limiting, or negative inner dialogue with language that nurtures your self-worth, reinforces your goals, and strengthens your emotional resilience. And this practice begins with awareness, because before you can change your self-talk, you must first recognize the patterns of thought that undermine your peace, such as self-criticism, blame, doubt, or pessimism. This recognition requires mindfulness and honesty, because your inner dialogue often operates automatically without conscious attention. Breaking that pattern begins by shining a light on it, which is the first step toward transformation. Once you become aware of your negative self-talk, the next step is to actively reframe your thoughts into empowering statements, because the words you speak to yourself have a direct impact on your emotions and behaviors. And when you intentionally choose affirmations that focus on your strengths, possibilities, and worth, you begin to rewire your brain to respond differently to stress and challenges. This rewiring creates a positive feedback loop where your mindset begins to shift toward growth, confidence, and peace. And over time, this rewiring becomes second nature, allowing you to approach life with greater courage and stability. Positive self-talk is not about ignoring reality or pretending difficulties don't exist, but about choosing a perspective that empowers rather than diminishes you, because life will always present challenges, but the way you interpret those challenges determines whether they become sources of pain or opportunities for growth. This interpretation is shaped by your internal dialogue, which is why transforming self-talk is such a powerful form of self-mastery, because it changes the way you experience life from the inside out. The practice of positive self-talk also requires specificity. Vague affirmations lack the emotional power needed to shift deep patterns of thought, and when your self-talk is specific, meaningful, emotionally resonant, it creates stronger neural pathways that support lasting change. This specificity comes from aligning your self-talk with your personal values, goals, and challenges, so that your affirmations speak directly to your life and your growth. This alignment transforms self-talk from a generic habit into a deeply personal tool for transformation. Positive self-talk strengthens emotional resilience because it becomes a source of inner encouragement and stability in moments of difficulty. And when you train yourself to speak to yourself with compassion, encouragement, and clarity during times of stress, you build a mental habit that helps you face challenges without being overwhelmed. And this habit becomes an inner shield that protects you from self-doubt and negativity. This is why positive self-talk is not just a technique, but a lifestyle choice that transforms your relationship with yourself and the world. The language of self-talk also shapes your self-image, because the stories you tell yourself about who you are become your reality. When you consistently speak to yourself in ways that affirm your strengths, worth, and potential, you begin to embody those beliefs in your actions and choices. This embodiment transforms not only your inner world, but also the external reality you create. Your self-image influences how you engage with life, and a positive self-image becomes a powerful force for growth, confidence, and peace. Positive self-talk strengthens self-trust, because the way you speak to yourself reflects how much you believe in your own capacity to navigate life. And when your inner dialogue consistently affirms your ability to handle challenges, make good decisions, and grow through difficulty, you cultivate a deep sense of trust in yourself. And this self-trust becomes the foundation of empowerment, because when you trust yourself, you no longer rely on external validation or the approval of others to feel strong, and this inner trust makes you unshakable in the face of life's storms. Positive self-talk is deeply connected to self-compassion, because speaking kindly to yourself is an act of self-love. This compassion transforms your inner world by replacing self-criticism with encouragement and self-blame with understanding, your full attention. And this transformation allows you to move through challenges without being weighed down by unnecessary guilt or shame. And it frees your mind to focus on growth rather than punishment. And this freedom becomes a cornerstone of lasting peace and resilience. The practice of positive self-talk is strengthened through repetition, because your mind builds new thought patterns through consistent reinforcement. When you practice affirmations daily, they become deeply embedded in your subconscious, transforming the way you think, speak, and respond. And this consistent practice is a lasting shift in mindset that makes positivity a natural part of who you are, rather than something you have to force. This is why daily intentional self-talk is essential for transformation. Positive self-talk also works best when paired with presence, because affirmations are most powerful when they are spoken with full awareness and intention. And when you anchor yourself talk in the present moment, you strengthen its impact, because your words are not merely abstract concepts, but active statements of your current choice to transform your mindset. And this presence creates a deeper connection between your inner dialogue and your lived experience, amplifying the power of self-talk to transform your life. Ultimately, positive self-talk is a deliberate act of self-empowerment, because it shifts control of your inner world into your own hands, and it is a skill that protects your peace, strengthens your resilience, and transforms your mindset. Nothing and nobody can hurt you as deeply when you have trained your mind to respond with self-love, encouragement, and positivity. This is the essence of transforming your life, because when your self-talk becomes a source of strength, your mind becomes a sanctuary, your life becomes an expression of resilience, peace, and unstoppable growth. This choice to transform your self-talk becomes the ultimate act of personal liberation and empowerment. Building mental resilience is one of the most essential steps in transforming your mindset and ensuring that nothing and nobody can hurt you again. Because resilience is not simply the ability to endure hardship, but the capacity to recover, grow, and thrive despite challenges. And this capacity is built through intentional thought patterns, habits, and perspectives that strengthen your emotional foundation and expand your ability to respond to life with strength rather than fear. And resilience begins with the understanding that life will always present difficulties, but your response to those difficulties determines whether they become obstacles or opportunities for growth. And this understanding requires self-awareness, because resilience is not an accidental state, but a cultivated skill that comes from consciously shaping your mindset to see challenges as a part of life rather than a threat to your peace. Mental resilience grows when you develop the habit of reframing adversity, because the meaning you give to your challenges shapes your emotional state, and reframing shifts your perspective from seeing setbacks as failures to seeing them as lessons. And this shift transforms not only how you experience difficulty, but also how you approach future challenges, because reframing builds a mental habit of looking for growth even in the most painful situations, and this habit strengthens your ability to remain calm, confident, and grounded no matter what life throws at you. Resilience also grows through cultivating a mindset of adaptability, because life is unpredictable, and those who cling rigidly to expectations suffer more deeply when things change, whereas adaptability allows you to flow with circumstances without losing your center. And this flexibility in thought and action is a hallmark of resilient people, because it frees them from being crushed by change and instead allows them to respond with creativity, calmness, and clarity. And adaptability requires a deep trust in your own capacity to handle uncertainty, which comes from repeated practice and self-belief. Another cornerstone of mental resilience is self-discipline, because resilience requires consistent effort to maintain emotional strength, and self-discipline helps you regulate your thoughts, emotions, and actions so that you can consistently respond to stress with balance rather than reaction. And this regulation becomes a form of self-mastery, because when you choose how to respond rather than reacting impulsively, you strengthen your inner authority over your life. And this inner authority is the foundation of true resilience, because it means you are no longer at the mercy of circumstances, but able to direct your path with intention. Resilience is also strengthened by emotional awareness, because being in touch with your emotions allows you to navigate them consciously, rather than letting them control you. And when you develop the ability to name your feelings, understand their origins, and choose your response, you empower yourself to break cycles of reactive thinking and emotional vulnerability, and this empowerment creates a deeper sense of peace and stability, because emotional awareness anchors you in your own inner reality rather than in the shifting storms of life. Gratitude is another powerful resilience builder, because a resilient mindset is rooted in the ability to see what is good in life, even during hardship, and gratitude shifts your focus from what you have lost to what you still have, which strengthens your capacity to endure and thrive. And this shift transforms your mental landscape by creating a foundation of positivity that supports you when difficulties arise, because gratitude rewires your brain to find hope and meaning even in the darkest moments, and this rewiring becomes a permanent resource for resilience. Resilience is also nourished by connection, because no one builds lasting strength in isolation, and relationships that provide support, encouragement, and honest feedback serve as emotional anchors during times of challenge. And these connections strengthen your resilience by reminding you that you are not alone in your struggles. They expand your perspective by allowing you to see beyond your own situation and draw strength from shared human experience. This communal resilience becomes a powerful counterforce to isolation and despair. Practicing self-care is another vital part of building mental resilience, because your emotional strength depends on your physical, mental, spiritual well-being, and self-care practices such as proper rest, nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, and reflection replenish your energy and sharpen your mental clarity. This replenishment sustains your ability to face challenges without becoming depleted, and self-care becomes a form of resilience training because it strengthens your capacity to respond to life from a place of balance rather than burnout. Resilience is deepened through the cultivation of a growth mindset. Seeing challenges as opportunities for growth transforms hardship into fuel for transformation, and this mindset shifts your relationship with difficulty from avoidance to engagement. It empowers you to see setbacks not as signs of failure, but as steps toward greater strength, wisdom, and self-mastery. This perspective builds an inner foundation that cannot be shaken by external circumstances, because your sense of self comes from your growth rather than your comfort. Another key to resilience is clarity of purpose, because when you know why you are enduring hardship, the struggle becomes meaningful rather than random suffering, and purpose provides direction, strength, and motivation in the face of challenges. And when your resilience is anchored in purpose, you gain the capacity to face even the most difficult circumstances without losing your sense of direction or your inner peace, as your focus shifts from pain to progress, and this shift fuels endurance. Resilience also grows when you embrace patience, because transformation and healing take time, and impatience creates frustration that undermines strength, whereas patience allows you to navigate challenges with steadiness and trust in the process, and patience becomes a form of emotional discipline that reinforces your ability to maintain peace even when progress feels slow. This steadiness strengthens your capacity to endure over the long term. Self-belief is the heart of resilience, because resilience is not simply surviving challenges, but trusting in your ability to grow through them, and this belief comes from repeated experiences of overcoming difficulty and from cultivating inner dialogue that affirms your worth and strength. When self-belief is strong, it becomes a shield against doubt, fear, and negativity, and this shield enables you to face life with courage when the future is uncertain, and this courage becomes a defining mark of resilient living. Ultimately, building mental resilience is an intentional process that requires consistent self-awareness, emotional discipline, adaptability, gratitude, connection, self-care, patience, and self-belief, because resilience is not something you have or don't have, but something you actively cultivate through practice. And when resilience becomes a way of life, it transforms not only how you respond to hardship, but who you are at your core. And this transformation is the foundation for a life in which nothing and nobody can hurt you again. Because your mind becomes anchored in strength, your heart in peace, and your spirit in unshakable courage. And this anchoring is the true essence of transforming your mindset, because resilience is not simply surviving the storm, but learning to dance in the rain with clarity, strength, and joy. This dance becomes the ultimate declaration of your power to grow beyond blame and embrace the life you are capable of creating. The journey toward ensuring that nothing and nobody can hurt you again requires cultivating the habit of self-empowerment, because empowerment is the conscious choice to take control of your life, your mindset, and your emotional responses. It begins with recognizing that your power lies in how you think, speak, and act, and this recognition is the foundation for a transformed life. Because when you understand that your inner world shapes your outer reality, you no longer surrender your peace to external circumstances or other people's actions, and instead you reclaim ownership of your emotional state and personal growth. This ownership becomes a shield against harm and a pathway to lasting freedom. Self-empowerment begins with awareness, because before you can claim your power, you must first see where you have given it away, whether to other people's opinions, past experiences, fears, or limiting beliefs, and this awareness requires deep honesty with yourself, because without seeing clearly where you are allowing external forces to influence your inner peace, it is impossible to take intentional steps toward change. This self-honesty becomes the first act of empowerment, because it illuminates the areas where transformation is possible and necessary. Once you are aware, the next step toward self-empowerment is taking full responsibility for your thoughts, emotions, and actions, because responsibility is not about blaming yourself for everything that happens, but about recognizing your ability to respond in ways that shape your experience and your growth. This recognition shifts your mindset from victimhood to ownership, and ownership is the gateway to power, because when you take responsibility, you stop giving your energy away to external blame and begin directing it toward your own healing and transformation. This redirection becomes the foundation of personal strength. Self-empowerment also grows when you align your thoughts and actions with your core values, because living in alignment creates integrity, and integrity strengthens your sense of self and your ability to stand firm in your truth. And this alignment builds a kind of inner fortitude that makes you less vulnerable to the opinions and judgments of others, because your inner compass becomes stronger than external noise, and this inner compass is a critical tool for protecting your peace, because it anchors you in clarity and purpose, even when life feels uncertain. Empowerment is further strengthened by cultivating emotional autonomy, because emotional autonomy is the ability to regulate your emotions without being controlled by them or by external triggers, and when you develop this ability, you free yourself from emotional dependence on others, and this freedom becomes a form of resilience, because you no longer need external validation to feel whole, and instead you can draw strength from within. This self-sourced strength makes you unshakable in the face of criticism, rejection, or adversity. Self-empowerment also involves cultivating clarity of vision, because when you know where you want to go and why, you are able to navigate life with intentionality rather than drifting reactively, and vision provides direction and meaning, which strengthen your capacity to overcome challenges. Because when your purpose is clear, obstacles become signposts rather than roadblocks. This shift in perception fuels persistence and courage, and these qualities are at the heart of empowerment because they allow you to transform setbacks into stepping stones toward your goals. Another pillar of self-empowerment is cultivating self-trust, because trust in yourself is the foundation for making decisions with confidence. And when you trust your ability to handle life's challenges, you are less likely to be swayed by fear or doubt, and more able to respond to difficulty with calm and clarity. And self-trust grows through repeated acts of self-reliance and integrity, because every time you stand by your own decisions and values, you reinforce your belief in your own inner strength, and this belief becomes a powerful source of stability and freedom. Self-empowerment is also built through developing self-awareness, because self-awareness allows you to recognize your strengths, weaknesses, and patterns of thought that either empower or limit you, and this recognition creates the opportunity for conscious change. Once you see what is holding you back, you can take deliberate steps to replace limiting habits with empowering ones. Your full attention and this conscious shaping of your inner world transforms your outer reality, because your life reflects the mental patterns you cultivate. Choosing empowerment changes everything about how you experience life. Empowerment is strengthened by embracing personal boundaries, because boundaries define what you accept and reject in your relationships and your life. And when you set and maintain boundaries with clarity and firmness, you protect your energy and your peace, and this protection creates the inner conditions for growth and confidence, because it affirms your worth and reinforces your control over your own life. And boundaries are not walls but gates that allow you to choose what you let in. This choice is an essential expression of empowerment. Self-empowerment also requires cultivating a mindset of possibility, because when you believe that you can create change and that you have the resources to grow beyond your current circumstances, you open the door to transformation, and this mindset shifts your focus from limitation to expansion, and expansion fuels action, because believing in possibility motivates you to take steps toward your vision rather than resigning yourself to the status quo. And this action is where empowerment becomes tangible, because your choices begin to reflect your inner conviction that you are capable of growth, healing. Empowerment is deepened by developing resilience, because resilience provides the emotional strength to sustain your empowerment in the face of difficulty. When you cultivate the capacity to bounce back from setbacks, you strengthen your ability to keep moving forward even when challenges arise. And this perseverance is a defining quality of empowerment, because it turns moments of hardship into opportunities for growth rather than defeat. This transformation of hardship into growth is the essence of what it means to be truly empowered. Self-empowerment also involves practicing gratitude, because gratitude shifts your perspective from lack to abundance, and this shift fuels a mindset of possibility and strength. And when you cultivate gratitude even in difficult moments, you reinforce your capacity to see value and meaning in life. And this capacity strengthens your emotional resilience and your belief in your own power to grow. And gratitude becomes a daily reminder that your peace is not dependent on circumstances, but on your inner choice to see and affirm the good in your life. Ultimately, self-empowerment is the deliberate choice to reclaim your inner authority, to take responsibility for your thoughts, emotions, and actions, and to live in alignment with your values, because this choice transforms your mindset and protects your peace. When self-empowerment becomes a way of living, you no longer give your power away to blame, fear, or external validation. Instead, you stand grounded in your own truth, strong in your own capacity, and free to create the life you desire. And this freedom is the essence of transformation, because it means that nothing and nobody can hurt you again, and your mind has become the safe, strong foundation for a life lived with courage, clarity, and unstoppable growth. True transformation and the ability to ensure that nothing and nobody can hurt you again depend on the consistent cultivation of positive self-talk, because the words we speak to ourselves shape our identity, influence our mindset, and determine how we interpret and respond to life. Self-talk is essentially the dialogue that occurs in your mind every moment of every day. And when this dialogue is rooted in compassion, empowerment, truth, it becomes a powerful force that protects your peace and strengthens your resilience. But when it is negative, critical, and self-defeating, it becomes a constant source of harm that erodes your confidence and weakens your emotional foundation. And this is why mastering self-talk is one of the most important skills for lasting personal growth and freedom, because it directly rewires the way you experience reality, and with intentional practice, you can transform your inner dialogue into a steady source of encouragement, clarity, and strength that shields you from harm. Positive self-talk begins with self-awareness, because before you can change your internal dialogue, you must first listen to it and recognize patterns that keep you stuck in fear, blame, or self-doubt. And this awareness comes from a conscious willingness to observe your thoughts without judgment, because only by witnessing your mental patterns can you identify those that are destructive and those that support growth. This witnessing is the first step in shifting your inner conversation from negativity to empowerment, because awareness creates the space for change. Once you are aware of your self-talk patterns, the next step is to intentionally challenge negative narratives and replace them with affirming ones, because every time you choose to reframe a thought, you strengthen your mental discipline and expand your ability to shape your inner reality. And reframing is not about ignoring challenges or pretending everything is perfect, but about consciously choosing language that reflects strength, compassion, and possibility, because the words you speak to yourself influence how you feel and act, and this influence is magnified over time, creating a mental environment where growth becomes natural and fear loses its power. Positive self-talk also requires cultivating self-compassion, because the voice inside you should not be your harshest critic, but your strongest supporter, and self-compassion allows you to speak to yourself with kindness, even when you make mistakes, because mistakes are opportunities for growth rather than evidence of failure, and when you adopt this compassionate inner voice, you protect yourself from the emotional harm of self-blame and foster resilience, because kindness toward yourself builds emotional safety, and emotional safety is the foundation for responding to life without fear of pain or rejection. Another key to mastering positive self-talk is replacing judgment with curiosity, because curiosity opens the door to understanding and learning, whereas judgment closes it with shame and self-criticism. When you approach yourself with curiosity, asking questions like, "What can I learn from this?" instead of, "Why am I not enough?" you create a mental habit that turns difficulty into an opportunity for growth, and this habit strengthens your ability to remain grounded and constructive under pressure, as curiosity transforms challenges into lessons rather than wounds, and this transformation is at the heart of self-empowerment. Positive self-talk is also strengthened by affirmations, because affirmations are deliberate statements that reinforce your worth, your power, your ability to grow beyond blame, and when repeated consistently, affirmations reprogram your mind to focus on strength and possibility, rather than fear and limitation, and this reprogramming creates a powerful shift in identity, because what you tell yourself shapes who you become, and intentional affirmations build a mental foundation where self-belief flourishes and vulnerability to harm is reduced. Your internal narrative aligns with your inner strength. Gratitude-based self-talk is another essential practice, because when you intentionally frame your inner dialogue in terms of gratitude, you shift your attention away from what is lacking toward what is abundant, and this shift changes your emotional state and strengthens your ability to navigate difficulty with grace. When gratitude becomes a central part of your self-talk, you cultivate a resilient mindset that sees opportunities and lessons, even in hardship, because gratitude rewires your mental perspective toward abundance rather than scarcity. This rewiring creates a deep well of emotional strength that protects you from being shaken by external challenges. Positive self-talk is deepened when you combine it with visualization, because the mind responds powerfully to imagery. When you visualize yourself as strong, safe, and growing, you reinforce these beliefs in your subconscious mind, and this reinforcement strengthens your emotional foundation, because visualization builds confidence, shapes your perception of possibility, and aligns your mental state with your desired reality, and this alignment becomes a source of protection against negative influences, because your inner dialogue has been trained to focus on your growth rather than your wounds. Another aspect of mastering positive self-talk is practicing presence, because when you are fully present, you are less likely to be hijacked by negative stories about the past or fears about the future. Instead, you respond to life from a grounded place of clarity and calm. And presence allows you to consciously choose your words and your inner tone in each moment, and this conscious choice is the essence of self-talk mastery, because your power lies in your ability to guide your mental dialogue toward support, growth, and resilience in real time. Positive self-talk is further strengthened by embracing authenticity, Because when your inner voice reflects your true values and desires rather than societal pressures or external expectations, your self-talk becomes a genuine source of strength and clarity, and authenticity creates alignment between who you are and how you speak to yourself. This alignment reinforces self-trust, because your words come from a place of truth rather than fear. This trust is a foundation for emotional safety and freedom. You no longer need to seek validation outside yourself when your inner voice affirms your worth. Self-talk mastery also requires regular reflection, because reflection allows you to evaluate whether your inner dialogue is empowering or harmful, and when you take time to consciously assess your mental patterns, you build the habit of self-correction, which strengthens your ability to maintain a positive mindset, and this self-correction becomes a daily practice of growth. It keeps your self-talk aligned with your highest values and your deepest goals, and this alignment becomes a lasting shield against harm. Ultimately, mastering positive self-talk is about building an ongoing practice of awareness, intentional language, self-compassion, curiosity, gratitude, visualization, presence, authenticity, and reflection, because these practices shape the mental habits that determine your inner reality, and when your self-talk becomes a consistent source of encouragement and clarity, you develop an unshakable inner fortress where nothing and nobody can hurt you again, because your mind has become your greatest ally, and this alliance transforms your life, because it changes the way you experience yourself, your challenges, and your growth. And this transformation is the essence of ensuring lasting freedom, inner peace, unstoppable personal evolution, the ultimate freedom from harm, and the lasting transformation of your mindset depends on integrating every lesson of personal growth into a daily practice that protects your peace and strengthens your resilience, because transformation is not a moment, but a process, and the process requires consistency, intention, and self-discipline. This is why Chapter 14 focuses on how to embody change through deliberate action, because knowledge alone cannot free you. It must be applied until it becomes part of who you are, and this embodiment is what ensures that nothing and nobody can hurt you again, because your inner strength becomes your default state rather than a temporary achievement. This state comes from living in alignment with the principles of self-awareness, positive self-talk, responsibility, and self-compassion every single day. True integration begins with commitment, because transformation requires a conscious decision to adopt empowering habits and to refuse to return to patterns that leave you vulnerable to harm. And commitment is sustained by clarity of purpose, because when you understand why you are working toward growth, you have a strong anchor to return to when life gets difficult, and purpose becomes the compass that keeps you moving forward. Even when challenges try to pull you back, this clarity turns change from an abstract idea into a lived reality. Integration also requires building a daily mental practice that includes intentional self-talk, self-reflection, gratitude, and visualization, because these practices are the tools that rewire your mind and anchor your transformation in the reality of your everyday life. And when these tools are used consistently, they strengthen your inner foundation and transform your thinking patterns. And this transformation is essential because what becomes habitual determines how you respond to adversity and whether you stand firm in your peace or give it away to external influences. A powerful part of this integration is ritual, because rituals create structure and meaning. When you establish daily rituals that reinforce your empowerment, such as morning affirmations, journaling, mindful breathing, or intentional reflection. You create a mental environment where growth becomes natural and self-protection becomes instinctive, and rituals train your mind to respond with strength rather than fear, and to approach life with clarity rather than chaos. And this training makes your inner peace resistant to disruption, because it becomes embedded in the way you live every day. Integration is also deepened by building resilience habits, because resilience is not a one-time skill, but a way of living. And when you practice resilience through intentional challenges, reflection, and self-care, you strengthen your capacity to maintain stability in the face of life's storms, and resilience becomes a part of your identity. And when resilience is part of who you are, harm loses its power, because you respond from a place of strength rather than reactivity, and this response transforms harm into opportunity for growth rather than a wound that lingers. Another key to integrating transformation is practicing consistent boundary setting, because boundaries are not a one-time action, but a continual practice that keeps your life aligned with your values and your peace intact. When boundary setting becomes habitual, you automatically protect yourself from harm without second guessing, because you have trained yourself to know what is acceptable and what is not, and this clarity creates safety in every relationship and situation, because your boundaries become a shield that reinforces your self-respect and your commitment to living authentically. Integration also involves cultivating self-awareness as a daily habit, because self-awareness allows you to monitor your thoughts, emotions, and patterns in real time, and this monitoring is essential for preventing old habits from creeping back. When self-awareness is part of your daily practice, you are able to course-correct instantly when negativity or blame arises. This capacity for real-time self-regulation becomes a powerful tool for maintaining transformation. You are no longer dependent on external events to dictate your emotional state, and instead you are the conscious architect of your inner world. Embodying change also requires embracing accountability, because when you hold yourself accountable for your mindset, your actions, and your growth, you create a strong structure for lasting transformation, and accountability keeps you on track when motivation wanes, because it creates a personal commitment that goes beyond fleeting feelings and ties your transformation to a deeper sense of purpose. This accountability fuels persistence, because knowing you are responsible for your own growth inspires consistent action, and this action builds the unshakable foundation that makes harm powerless. Integration is further strengthened by cultivating an environment that supports your growth, because your surroundings, physical, social, mental, affect the way you think and feel, and when you consciously design an environment that reinforces positivity, empowerment, and growth, you make transformation inevitable, because your daily life becomes a constant reinforcement of your commitment to self-protection and personal evolution. This alignment between your environment and your intentions creates a powerful synergy that accelerates change and makes your new mindset a natural way of living. Another essential part of integration is practicing forgiveness, because forgiveness is a release that frees you from the grip of the past and removes emotional chains that block growth. When forgiveness becomes part of your daily practice, you prevent old wounds from dictating your present, and this release strengthens your resilience. It replaces resentment with peace, and peace is the ultimate protection against harm, because a peaceful mind is unshakable and grounded regardless of circumstance, and this grounding is the essence of lasting transformation. Integration also involves a commitment to lifelong learning, because transformation is never truly complete. It is a continual process of growth, reflection, and refinement, and when you approach your life as a constant opportunity to learn, you sustain your empowerment over time, because you remain open to change, curiosity, and self-improvement, and this openness ensures that harm loses its power, because you are always evolving and adapting, and adaptation creates resilience, and resilience creates freedom, and freedom becomes your lived reality. Ultimately, Chapter 14 teaches that transformation is not a destination, but a living practice. And the only way to ensure that nothing and nobody can hurt you again is to integrate every insight, every practice, and every habit of self-empowerment into the core of your daily life. Because when empowerment becomes your way of living, it stops being an effort and becomes your nature, and this living embodiment of growth becomes your greatest protection, because your mind, your words, and your actions are aligned with the truth that your power is yours to keep, and this truth becomes the foundation of a life lived with courage, clarity, unstoppable transformation, and in that state, harm loses its hold forever. The final step in ensuring that nothing and nobody can hurt you again lies in the full embodiment of your transformed mindset. Transformation is not truly complete until it becomes your way of being in the world, and Chapter 15 is about living with unshakable resilience, unwavering self-respect, and the kind of inner strength that turns challenges into opportunities rather than wounds, because lasting change requires living out the principles you have cultivated in every moment of your life. They are no longer separate practices, but a part of who you are, and this embodiment is what gives your transformation permanence, because when your identity becomes rooted in empowerment and self-awareness, external circumstances lose the ability to destabilize you, and harm becomes powerless against the force of your inner fortress. Living with this embodiment begins with full ownership of your growth, accepting complete responsibility for your mindset, your choices, and your emotional state is the foundation for lasting freedom, and ownership means no longer blaming others for your pain or allowing yourself to be a victim of circumstance, because you recognize that your power to change lies within you, and that every challenge is an opportunity to strengthen that power. This recognition transforms how you face life, because you approach each situation as an expression of your own agency, rather than a reaction to outside forces. Embodiment also requires constant self-awareness, because living in alignment with your transformed mindset means continuously monitoring your thoughts, emotions, and reactions, and this level of self-awareness allows you to detect when old patterns of blame, fear, or negativity are resurfacing. Shift your inner dialogue before they take hold, and this real-time self-regulation becomes a powerful form of self-protection, because it allows you to respond from clarity and strength instead of slipping into harmful patterns, and this response becomes your daily defense against harm, creating a mental shield that is always active. Another part of this embodiment is the consistent practice of positive self-talk, because your inner dialogue is the lens through which you experience reality, and when your self-talk is rooted in compassion, encouragement, and empowerment, you build a mental environment that naturally repels harm, because your internal voice supports your strength rather than feeding doubt, and this habit becomes a part of who you are, so that in every moment of difficulty you instinctively turn to words of courage and affirmation, reinforcing your inner fortress, and this instinctive positivity is a key sign that your transformation is fully embodied. Embodiment also means living with purpose, because purpose anchors your mind, fuels your resilience, and gives meaning to your growth. And when your daily life is aligned with your deepest values and goals, your mindset becomes unshakable, because you are no longer moved by trivial distractions or harmful influences, but grounded in a vision of who you are becoming. And this grounding becomes your shield, because your life is rooted in clarity rather than chaos, and clarity is the ultimate protection against harm. Living with embodiment also requires consistent boundary setting. Boundaries are not a one-time action, but an ongoing practice of self-respect and self-care. And when boundaries are lived daily, they create a protected space where your growth can thrive. And this practice trains your mind and heart to honor your worth automatically, because it becomes a habit rather than a choice. And this habit strengthens your ability to remain safe and empowered in any circumstance, and it turns your life into a living expression of self-protection. Embodiment also requires forgiveness, not as a one-time act but as a continual state of release, because forgiveness frees you from the grip of past pain and removes the emotional chains that keep you vulnerable. And when forgiveness becomes a way of living, you no longer carry the weight of resentment or hurt that others may have caused. This freedom creates space for peace, because peace is not a momentary experience, but a sustained way of living. This sustained peace is the ultimate state where harm cannot touch you, because your inner world remains steady regardless of external events. Another aspect of living with embodiment is cultivating gratitude as a daily state of mind, because gratitude transforms how you perceive life. When gratitude is woven into every thought and moment, your mental perspective shifts toward abundance rather than lack. And this shift strengthens your resilience, because a mind focused on abundance finds opportunity even in difficulty. And this focus creates an emotional immunity to harm, because your attention is fixed on growth rather than pain. Growth is the foundation of lasting strength. Embodiment also involves living with authenticity, because when you live in alignment with your true self, your words, actions, and thoughts become congruent, and this congruence creates self-trust, which is the bedrock of personal power. And self-trust allows you to stand firm against harm, because you know that your inner voice and your actions are grounded in truth, and truth is unshakable. Living with authenticity means no longer wearing masks to please others, but living as a full expression of who you truly are. And this expression becomes your ultimate protection, because there is nothing outside of you that can destabilize the truth of who you are. Living with embodiment also means embracing a lifelong commitment to growth, because transformation is not a final destination, but an ongoing journey. This commitment ensures that your mindset continues to evolve, adapt, and strengthen over time. And when growth becomes a lifestyle rather than a goal, you continually deepen your resilience, because you are always learning, expanding, and refining your inner power. This dynamic growth becomes an ever-renewing shield against harm, because you are never stagnant, and stagnation is where vulnerability hides. Ultimately, Chapter 15 teaches that the greatest protection from harm is not something external, but the living embodiment of an empowered mindset. This embodiment is built through daily practices of self-awareness, positive self-talk, responsibility, boundary setting, forgiveness, gratitude, authenticity, and growth. And when these practices become the fabric of your life, you create an inner state that is unshakable, because your mind has become your greatest ally. And this alliance transforms every aspect of your life, because it changes not only how you respond to challenges but how you perceive them, and in that transformed state, harm loses its power entirely, because you stand grounded in your truth, anchored in your purpose, and shielded by your inner strength. This is the ultimate freedom. The freedom of knowing that nothing and nobody can ever hurt you again.